So for all Doug McGregor's problems, at least he's not pious, right? There's an enormous international humanitarian law world out there where all sorts of people are doing all sorts of things that make them feel amazing and excited, but it's a terribly pious and pompous world that doesn't tend to have much of an effect on the real world. Samuel Moyne, he's a Harvard scholar. He wrote a great book about the human rights industrial complex. And he notes that scholars of human rights and international humanitarian law, they approach their subject the same way that church historians once approached theirs. Right? They regard the basic cause, just as church historians treated the Christian religion, as a saving truth, right? A salvific process, right? Discovered rather than made in history. And so the heroes who advance human rights in the world, just like the Christian church's apostles and saints, are treated with uncritical wonderment, hagiography, for the sake of moral imitation of those who chase the flame of international humanitarian law and human rights. It becomes the main genre. And the organizations that institutionalize human rights are treated like the early church, a fledgling but hopefully universal community of believers struggling for good in a vale of tears. If the cause fails, it is because of evil. If it succeeds, it's not by accident, but because the cause is just. Well, human rights virtually never succeed as a cause, right? So this is a movement that operates dominantly on myth, which is kind of weird, because when you're trying to make the case for a movement that is new, that is highly contingent, meaning it has no power, and whatever influence and whatever possible power it might have is highly contingent on various nation states deciding to use the human rights crusade for their own purposes. Do you know anyone who's big in human rights who comes from a right-wing background? They overwhelmingly come from backgrounds in feminism, Marxism, communism, Leninism, anti-colonialism, leftism. They become disappointed with left-wing utopian politics such as Marxism and communism, and they're seeking another utopian crusade, and it doesn't matter to them if it makes no difference in the real world. And the way they talk about human rights is the same way that a rabbi will give a sermon in an Orthodox synagogue, where you just take it for granted that people are going to accept that the Torah came from God.